Good morning, everybody. This is a brief introduction to Marvelous Designer. Because I'm using the new computers, there's no cameras, I can't see you, you can't see me, and there's no opportunity for chat or putting your hand up in this software. So I am going to talk at you for about 40 minutes, and then there'll be the opportunity to move into Zoom and you can ask questions and we can talk things through that way. Okay. So I'm sorry this is such a one-way tutorial, so to speak. So I'm just going to briefly go through the Marvelous Designer workspace. As you can see, there's lots going on, and most of this you don't need. It's very much pick the tools that suit you, the tools that you need for what you're doing. So just to make sure everybody is looking at the same thing, we're going to go to the simulation workspace. So if you're not seeing this and you don't have the word simulation here at the top right, click the little arrow and just make sure you've chosen it from there, okay? Because the workspaces will all look different. So within that we have the menu bar across the top, we have options that may come up in this space in between, the toolbars are across the top, we have some parameter boxes and options boxes along the side, so I can just choose from here. So on one side we've got library, history and the modular configurator. You can fold those back using the little arrows to the side. And on the other side we've got the object browser and the property editor. And again you can fold those up by using the arrow. Okay. So the workspace is in two halves. On the right hand side you've got a pattern editor that is very similar to if you're used to using Gerber or Illustrator. You can just draw out your pattern blocks in here and show them on the avatar on the left hand side. You can flip between the 2D and 3D workspaces using the icons down here at the bottom, or go back to the split screen. I found it easier to work in the split screen, so it's kind of preference once again. And at the left of the avatar you've got some icons that just show you how you're fitting your garment to it. So looking at these icons down the left hand side, you can see some of them are lit up a bit more than others, and those are the ones that you've got options to choose from. So this bottom one here, I can choose the avatar view that I've got at the moment, which is just a monochrome surface. I can choose to colour the surface with texture, or I could choose a mesh surface. And for pattern making and design we're best with the model surface there, the textured surface. Getting rid of my avatar there, and we're going to start from the beginning, load up an avatar and look at how to build a pattern block and attach it. I need to start with the library on the left hand side, so if I double click the library, in here I can choose from garment, avatar, fabric, hardware and trim, so these things are all preloaded. I'm going to go for avatar, which is just Marvelous Designer's mannequin or stand, and I can choose from a variety of female, male and child icons, and also some stylized ones that are more suitable for gaming. I'm just going to choose the female A. If I double click on it I can see what it's going to look like, and if I double click again it will open. You may get a box at the beginning to add an arrangement point. Because I've already loaded up my preferences, I haven't got that, but you need to check that when you do. So here's my avatar. If I'm working on a laptop, I can use the trackpad, so I can zoom in and out by scrolling on the trackpad. And I can right click and hold and go around the whole object in a 3D workspace. It's much easier to use a mouse, Then you can use the middle scroll wheel in the middle to zoom in and out, and right click and hold to look around the avatar. And number 2 on your keypads, we'll just reset it to the middle. There's a lot of shortcuts in Marvelous Designer, so this first tutorial we will get most of our tools from the toolbars, but as you get quicker you'll find it much easier to use the shortcuts. So there's my first avatar. I could choose a garment now from the garment library. And there are quite a few in there. You can load up garment libraries that you download from the internet as well, but obviously we're trying to make things of our own, so I'm going to ignore that. And I'm just going to fold that menu back in using the little arrow, so I've got more space. Here's my avatar in the 3D workspace. I've got the pattern base in the 2D pattern window. I can flip between those two spaces using the toggle buttons down here, 2D, 3D, or go back to the split screen using the split screen icon there. So Marvelous Designer has lots of pattern blocks that you can download and play with, but really if you're designing your own clothing you need to start from scratch. You need to make your own garments. So we're going to look at how to do that. I'm just going to make a basic t-shirt. Up here in the 2D pattern window I've got some options. If you left click and hold on those, you get to see the other things that are hiding under the icons. Okay, so there's quite a few in there. If you're used to working in Illustrator or Gerber, you should find this quite straightforward. Okay. I'm going to start with left clicking and holding on this shape here. It might have looked like that, it might have looked like a rectangle. If I click and hold I can find the polygon tool. There are lots of shortcuts in Marvelous Designer, so we're just going to use the main ones to start with and then build them in as we go along. I'm going to start with a vest kind of shape for my t-shirt base. And again, there are lots of different ways of doing this. You could draw it all out very carefully first. I'm just going to block out my basic shape. Again, if you're used to making patterns, you should find this quite simple. I'm just doing half of the front there. So there's my first piece, and you'll notice that that's now appeared in a 3D pattern window, so I can scroll around and see it. It's appeared in front of my avatar, which is good. Sometimes it appears in weird places, so bear that in mind. And if I select it in the window here, I can move it around if I want to. I can move it up and down. If you catch these circles, that will rotate it, so try not to do that because that can be quite awkward. You end up with it all spinning around in the project space. If that happens to you, Command Z on the keyboard will just step you back. Okay, same as in Photoshop and Illustrator. So I'm just going to start out with that. Now, I could simulate that as it is. In fact, I will. So this arrow top left simulates the fabric. And as you can see, it's not attached to anything, so it just drips down. So Command Z just stepped him back there. I can tack it by holding down W on the keyboard and then left clicking, and that's just put a couple of pinpoint tacks in there. and that will hold it up in the air for me so I can see what I'm doing and where things are. I'm just going to clear those tacks using Command W on the keyboard. So there's my first piece. I'm just going to line that up roughly where I want. I'm going to go back in now and just make some changes to the shape. If I left click on this second icon, I've got some choices in here. I can edit the pattern, edit the curve points, smooth the curves and transform the points, so very similar to Illustrator. And I'm just going to edit curve points and curvature. So edit curvature, or C on the keyboard, means that I can click on a segment and just change the curve. So maybe do the armhole here. V on the keyboard means you can grab a segment point. I'm just going to drag that down, and then C just to curve it a little bit. Just go back to this one. Z on the keyboard gives you the little handles that you'll remember from Illustrator. Okay? You can use those to change the angle of your curve. I found Marvelous Designer doesn't like sharp curves, so something like that, with this kind of weird sharp point there, it will do weird things. So try and keep the curves as smooth as possible. So I'm just using a mixture of V to change the points and C to change the curves till I get something that I'm happy with. And I'm going to go back to the whole piece, so this icon top left, or A on the keyboard, and I've just selected it so the outline is yellow. And I want to double this. I want to copy and paste this but flip it the other way so that I'm making the other side of my top. So if I right click, I get a big menu comes up, and from there I'm going to choose Symmetric Pattern with Sewing. That's given me a second piece that I can line up roughly in the right place. You'll see that's appeared in the 3D workspace window. And I chose with sewing because what I want is for anything I attach to one side, anything I do to one side will be copied automatically to the other side. So it will save me some time when I put the sleeves on, and it will mean that everything's symmetrical and things are sort of matched up properly. So now I just need to stitch those two pieces together. The second row of toolbars has got all the sewing techniques in, and if I left click on the second sewing machine I can choose segment sewing. I'm going to choose that, and that lets me click on the first piece and this tiny line comes up, and then I can click to the second piece and it will automatically match those segments for me and stitch them together. If you look in a 3D workspace now you can see that that's happened. Yes, you can see those stitch lines together. I could stitch that now and pull those lines in, but because it's not attached to anything it will just fall down. So if I click on the simulation arrow here at the top left, it will pull in the stitches, but there's nothing to hold it up, so it's just going to drop to the floor. Command Z just to bring that back up. I could pin this with tacks up at the top there just to hold it so I can see what's going on. If I hold down W on the keyboard and left click with the mouse, I've got these two little tacks came up, and now when I simulate it holds it up in the air at least. Okay, so I'll just leave those there for now. So next I want to make a back to this garment. So if I come back over and choose the pattern transform tool, I'm going to select both of these pieces. So click on one, shift select the next one, Command C to copy, Command V to paste. I can just drop those down to the side. So that's given me my back. If we just go to the 3D workspace, you can see that I've got my front piece in front and my back piece is not in front at all. And that can be a problem because when we join the two pieces together, it can't always work out where I want to put them. I'm just going to get rid of all the tacks, so Command W on the keyboard will get rid of those. And I've just shift selected both pieces. You'll remember at the beginning I said make sure you check adding the arrangement points is on when you load up the avatar. The arrangement points give you this extra way of looking at it. So 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces down, 4 icons down, and 3 along gives you the arrangement points. If I click on that, my avatar is now covered in blue dots. I can use those to roughly line up where I'm going to put the fabric. It just means that I don't have to try and get it into the right place using the rotate and transport gizmo. So I'm going to select my first 2 pieces of fabric there and then choose roughly something on the front body that will be in roughly the right place. So if you just hover your mouse over, doesn't have to be exact, you're just giving Marvelous Designer an idea of where you're likely to put it. Now if I look at the back piece, at the moment you can see I've got the front of the fabric there and the back of the fabric on the other side. It's showing dark, so I know that's the back. So if I automatically try to wrap this, so if I grab the back piece, now select both pieces, I can locate a spot on the back of the body and just attach those in there. Again, I still can't simulate this because it will just fall to the floor, there's nothing holding it together. So the next thing I'm going to do is stitch the top of the shoulder seams together. So back to the pattern window, and I want the segment sewer again, and I'm going to stitch first side together, and it will automatically stitch the other side as well. So this is where some knowledge of patterns comes in quite handy. Now when I synchronise this, it should just tighten up all the stitching and give me a basic vest. I'm going to come back to the pattern window and get the segment sewer again and just stitch one side. So I've clicked on one, click on the other, it'll work out the rest for me and I can synchronise that. So that's given me a basic vest. If there's any bits that are a bit not quite sort of sitting right, like the shoulders sometimes don't, you can go in now after synchronising. You can go in now after simulating and just use the little hand tool to pick up and wiggle the fabric about. And sometimes you can just unwrinkle things that way. I've got my sewing outlines turned on here, so you can get that. If you can't see these coloured lines, they are in the first box at the top there. And you can turn on the various things, so I've got the sewing lines turned on. Okay, I'll just click back on the simulator. I can see now my garment. So from there I might go back in now and just adjust some of the points. So obviously the sleeves are a little bit dodgy there. So if I come back over to the pattern window and choose V, I can grab that point and just adjust it slightly, and you can see straight away that that's changed my avatar. And it's also moved all the front points in the same way. Just move that. So see very quickly what effect I'm having on it. Just sort the neck out there in front. So I've got a bit of a wrinkle thing going on here, so I think that could probably do with a bit of a change in the shape of the bottom of the vest there. And I can add in a point using X on the keyboard. So if I hold down X, I can just choose somewhere to add that point in. And then use V to just change it slightly on the other side. And it starts to pull in the fabric there. A bit of a shake. There we go. Okay, so I can quite quickly build up sort of a basic pattern there. I'm going to add some sleeves next. If you do a fashion design course or you've done some pattern cutting, you will find this quite easy. If you haven't, sleeves are a bit of a weird thing because they don't look like you would expect them to look, kind of weird shape. So if that's the case, if you haven't had any experience of sleeves, Google and just have a look at a sleeve pattern, so just so that you've got some idea as to how they look. So I'm going to start by blocking in the sleeves. So I've just got my polygon tool there, and I'm going to make a sort of sleeve shape that tracks the arm there. And then I'm going to go back in and just adjust some of these points. So I need to make sure that this line here is roughly the size of this line here, so that the two pieces fit together. So I'm just going to turn on line measurements using this icon here. You can see the curve's 256 and my line is 237, so we can fit one into the other with a little bit of gathering, but I want to curve this line out anyway, so I'm just going to drag it out until it's roughly the same. And now I can just change any edges here then, so I probably don't want this very pointy edge here, so it'll be on the keyboard. It'll just allow me to shrink that. Cut here, and to the back. So there's half my sleeve, and I need to open it out so that I've got a full piece of fabric. So Z on the keyboard allows you to just adjust one thing at a time. I'm going to select that line, right click on it and choose unfold, and that's just unfolded my piece of fabric. So that's just doubled and unfolded the fabric effectively, which is a nice way to do it because it means I don't have a joining seam in here. Okay, so from there I need to try and fit my sleeve into the curve here, so I should be able to do that with segment sewing. I'm just going to choose the segment sew tool. And I can get the front one in straight away because I know where that should be. And if I have a look at the model itself, I can locate the back edge and find the right point on the sleeve to attach that to, and that just makes it easier than trying to find your seams in here. Just simulated that, and it's a bit rough, but if I just use the hand I can pull it around until I get where I want. I'm just going to sew up the bottom. So back to the segment sewer. We'll take the first one on the 2D pattern thing and the second one on the model. A little bit until I get it where I want. I could have used arrangement points to fit the sleeve as well, and then hopefully it would have just been in the right place rather than having to pull these bits around. I can go back in and make some changes if I'm not happy with the way the sleeve's shaped. I could anchor the sleeve further down so we get a little bit of a dolman kind of curve going, whatever. So now I just need to repeat that for the other side. If I come back to the 2D pattern window and select the sleeve and Command C to copy, or you could do it in the menu here, copy. And now for symmetric pattern with sewing, and that will take all the sewing and the sleeve in on the other side there. I just simulated that in. So we've got a basic t-shirt now with sleeves. I'm going to do a couple more things just to trim it down. In later tutorials we'll look at adding binding and proper necklines and facing and things. But this one I'm just going to make it look a little bit better. So that's the t-shirt basically. I'm just going to add a couple of things in to make it look a little bit nicer. So from here, the end, we've got some options on the end here. Let's choose a segment top stitch, and then I can just go along the armholes. It's quite hard to see at the moment, but if I just scroll into one area you can see the top stitching lines here. And we'll change the colour of the thread in a moment and that will make it easier to see. And finally I'm going to recolour my t-shirt and change the fabric. So I'm going to come over into the property editor, which is one of the tabs on the right hand side, and choose pattern pieces. In here we've got all the information about the piece itself, the size, simulation properties, which is something we'll look at much later on when we're rendering. And we have some details about the fabric. And by double clicking on the fabric I can go in and change the colour. Choose something from the fabric library that's already here. I can change the opacity, so make a kind of nice mesh looking garment there. I can change lots of properties within the t-shirt itself, so they're all interesting things that you could have a play with. Change how shiny it is, and reflection properties, and just roughness. There are lots and lots of different things that you can play around with in there. You can add different fabrics up here in the top part. So add a new one, and then change. And then I can come back to each individual piece of garment and choose which fabric I'm going to apply to it. I can just drag and drop onto the pieces that I want to change the colour for. So let's just change the sleeves. I can come into the top stitch and specify the colour. So my computer has crashed and my avatar has disappeared, so I'm going to stop here. And we'll move to the Zoom link.